Good morning. My name is Hugh Forrest. I am the Chief Programming Officer at South by Southwest. Welcome to Thursday, March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm not wearing green. Somewhere I am wearing green, but not to tell you guys. Okay, we have a great session this morning about aviation. I got a few housekeeping things to talk about first. If you've heard my intros before, I've plugged the trade show on the first floor. The trade show is now closed, Creative Industry Expos, but Flatstock 77 begins today. Great poster art from all kinds of bands. My recommendation is don't go in there with too much cash, else you won't come out with very much cash. You've also heard me plug our t-shirts, which benefit Ukraine. I'm happy or unhappy to report that we are now sold out of those t-shirts. We may get some more in. We may get some more online after the event. There are still pins, donation pins that you can buy downstairs at the merch booth on the west side near that Flatstock entrance. Speaking of Ukraine, we have a session at 3:30 p.m. today in Ballroom D. That's the big ballroom down the stairs or down the hallway. That is Ukraine for Peace, supporting the creators and innovators. Certainly an important topic. There'll be 3 expats from Ukraine on stage, 1 broadcasting in from Kiev. Again, that's an important topic, and I'm glad we're covering it. Let me quickly say that in a world where we have to deal with things like that, inspiration is even more important. We all need more inspiration. To that end, I'm going to plug one of my favorite sessions coming up, which is Eddie Zhang, who started something called the New Breath Foundation. He will be speaking in this room tomorrow morning, 11:30. He's someone who spent 25 years in jail, came out a much better man, and dedicated his life to helping others. There's a fabulous story about him in the New Yorker in December, so please check that out. That is, again, 11:30 tomorrow morning in this room. You can find it on the South by Southwest schedule by searching under Eddie Zhang. Okay, we need more inspiration. We also need more and better transportation, which is where we are today. We added a transportation track for South by Southwest 2022. We've done transportation in the past, but we've never had a full-on track like we have this year, so really excited about that, and certainly very excited about today's featured session with Doug Parker, the chairman and CEO of American Airlines. Interviewing Doug will be executive editor Lee Ann Shay from Aviation Week. Please give a big South by Southwest welcome to Lee Ann Shay.
Good morning and welcome to this session. I can't tell you how excited I am. This is my first South by Southwest, and the fact that I get to talk with Doug Parker, I think it's going to be pretty awesome. But before we bring Doug out, we'd like to show you a brief video of some of his career highlights.
I first met Doug at Albion College. I hate to say it, but 40 years ago. I remember Doug from the earliest days of our friendship being a lot of fun, very humble, and always optimistic about the future.
After completing an MBA at Vanderbilt, he was recruited by American Airlines into their finance department.
Doug and I both started working at American in 1986 in finance. American was growing quickly, and it was really a great time to be starting a career in the airline industry.
Doug's understanding of airline financials was growing, and other airlines took notice. Northwest Airlines calling first.
Doug accomplished amazing things at Northwest during the period of time that he was there, including the restructurings, the returning of the airline to the public markets, and the flight profitability system. However, he attracted the attention of Bill Franke, who recruited him away from Northwest.
1995 to 2001, he was like on a rocket. And he moved fairly quickly from his initial position to becoming CFO. We started moving him through various positions in operations and human resource to try to develop him as the next leader.
With Doug's career in full motion, his leadership skills were tested mightily in the wake of 9/11. Having been named CEO of America West Airlines only 10 days earlier, survival for the small Phoenix-based airline was on the line.
In early January of 2002, he had to make a choice. He could either make a bond payment on a double ETC, or he could make payroll for his 12,000 employees. He couldn't do both. Now, Doug chose to pay his employees.
Doug played a leadership role in the industry by advocating for government support until demand could resume. For America West, he pulled out all the stops, testifying before Congress to express need for industry support.
We need to stabilize this industry. We need to restore consumer confidence, and then we can move forward. But right now, we need stabilization, and we need it now.
They changed the way he became a leader. He realized that these are my people to take care of. He wanted to create an environment where they're happy to go to work, and he wanted to create a company that was sustainable and would always be there for them.
In the years following 9/11, and although customer demand had returned, a fragmented U.S. industry where even the largest competitors had a measly 15% market share meant something had to change.
Doug was absolutely resolute that consolidation had to happen to assure that the industry was sustainable and be able to thrive in the upturns, survive the downturns.
We're happy that we're profitable, we're growing, we're keeping our costs down, we're building our cash. We feel good about all those things.
America West was in a great position in 2005 to be able to make a bid on this struggling airline coming out of bankruptcy, the old U.S. Airways.
At this point, Northwest and Delta had merged. Continental and United also merged. Southwest had acquired AirTran, leaving American Airlines as a potential partner for U.S. Airways.
One of the things that I think the U.S. Airways team did extraordinarily well was to present the synergies case about how much more value there would be with these airlines together as opposed to being apart.
With the new American Airlines ready to compete, Doug was prepared to follow through with his commitment to the new team by ensuring they were taken care of for the long term.
He gave the unions some increased compensation, even though it wasn't required by the contract, because he thought, and I think rightly so, that the people would feel left out if something wasn't done to bring them into greater harmony with their competitors.
In spite of a healthier industry, no one could have foreseen a global pandemic combined with growing division across the globe. With the world in lockdown, Doug's commitment to his team and the U.S. commercial airline industry was once again on full display.
Over Girl Scout cookies and red wine, because there was no food available downtown already at that point, we did reach that consensus and proceeded to get the payroll support program passed, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
He's a North Star person. He has a guiding light and principles by which he lives his life. Doug knows instinctively what the right thing is to do.
Good friend to all, humble,
calm, champion of our frontline team,
and brilliant.
So with further ado, Doug, come on up.
Thank you.
Hi. Hey, how are you?
Well, how are you?
Good, thanks. You've had quite a career, and your career has been bookended by 9/11, and now we've been in a pandemic, and there was the Great Recession in the middle. Like, how has navigating between these bad events been different?
Different? Yeah, but they're all obviously different. I mean, 9/11 was a tragedy for our industry, unlike anything we'll ever experience again, hopefully. And the Great Recession was difficult for all of industry, but particularly for cyclicals like airlines. So that was touch and go for a while. And then, but in terms of the economic impact, this has been by far the greatest. I mean, add both of those up in terms of financial impact, and this pandemic for airlines has been, even those two added up are probably, this is 2 or 3 times more impactful. I mean, it's just our demand for travel went away immediately, and indeed is nowhere close to all the way back. So here it is 2 years later, and we're still having to work through it. But so they're different in terms of the magnitude, but they're also similar in how you get through them. It's just, what we recognize, what we said to ourselves at the start of this was, look, this is going to pass. I mean, back then we thought it was going to pass a lot sooner than it did,
right.
But we knew this doesn't define us, this isn't who we are, this is a crisis, and it's going to pass. And what's going to matter, because we'd learned this through others, what's going to matter is how people feel about how we treated them at the end of it. So we made sure we took care of our customers as best we possibly could. We made sure we took care of our team as best we possibly could. Some airline, of course, we were doing everything we can to conserve cash because that's the lifeline at the time. But that didn't mean doing things like some of our competitors did, like changing the rules on what's a cancellation. If you cancel a flight for a customer, you have to offer them a cash refund, of course. If we don't cancel if it flies and the customer chose not to go because of the pandemic, which many did, we said, okay, we'll give you a voucher. So some airlines changed their definition of what a cancellation was. It used to be 4 hours, now it's 24 hours. I don't know about you, but if we tell you your flight's 24 hours later, it feels like it's been canceled, right?
Oh yeah.
So anyway, we wouldn't do things like that, and it helped us not just. And you can look at that and think, well, that's that must have hurt you. Cash was really valuable, but what it does is it makes you think about sticking to our values. And we knew we were going to get through it one way or the other, and the way we got through it was by going and taking care of our team, working with our unions, and going together and getting bipartisan support for legislation that no other industry got done. But that's because we went and worked with our team, and we wanted to support our team, and we pulled that off. So I don't know, long way of saying it's been by far the most difficult, but it's also, I think, been the most rewarding to get through because of the way we did it.
That sounds good. And unfortunately now Russia invaded Ukraine 3 weeks ago, and there's a humanitarian crisis. The Ukraine is being devastated, but it's also causing an increase in fuel prices for everybody who has a car. You've seen it at the pump, and for airlines, fuel prices is going up. So how is this impacting both fuel and your European routes, the European market?
Yeah, so far it hasn't affected demand, but again, demand for international travel right now isn't the greatest because of the restrictions on traveling internationally. But we've seen no impact really on demand for travel. We don't fly to the Ukraine or even as close as Poland. So Western Europe is still holding up nicely. But yeah, fuel prices, it's our second largest expense behind payroll, has spiked, and that makes it harder on us to recover. So it'll take a little longer, I think, but that's okay. We're prepared for it. We can handle higher costs. Generally in our business, it takes when prices spike like this, it takes a good bit of time before we can actually get to where we can recover it. The industry, if these really are the new levels of jet fuel, if crude is going to stay above $100 a barrel, we eventually, you'll see fewer seats, unfortunately. You'll see prices reflect the higher cost of production. That's what's been the case in the past. We've made money as an industry with $100 a barrel oil as recently as 2014. So we'll do it again. So I'm not really worried about that. We haven't mentioned yet that that whole video is really nice, but I'm leaving American March 31st. Turning it over to an amazing executive, Robert Isom. And unfortunately, that's what I don't like about this, this timing. So much of where we have the airline position and the industry position now is moving, out of this crisis, and everything feels, and I felt really, really good about the timing of when we were going to make this transition and leaving the new team headwinds. They don't need me. They're going to do great stuff. But I wanted to see them have successes and visible successes. And now this makes it harder. It'd be nice if you quickly saw profitability, and so this will make it hard. But they're up for it. But that's what bothers me the most about it. Is just when you think you're coming out of things, and here comes something else. But that's kind of what our business does.
We're going to talk about succession planning a little bit, but I wanted to ask you another question about long-haul travel. The long-haul transcon markets have been difficult the last, non-existent the last couple of years. Looking into your crystal ball, when do you think long-haul will really resume? Is it going to be this year, next year? And, alliances are such an integral part to international operations. Do you see any changes to those alliances? Sure.
First off, international travel. I mean, the problem with international travel, there's huge pent-up demand for international travel. People want to travel abroad, I know, and we hear it all the time. The problem, of course, is the restrictions that we still have in place. I mean, for good reason they were put in place. I'm not sure the good reasons still exist, but they will fall eventually. And as they do, we immediately see travel pick back up. So first off, travel, in and around the United States, our domestic travel, the demand for domestic travel is as strong as it's ever been. If you're traveling this summer, if you're traveling today, you're seeing full airplanes. Really, I can't remember a period of time when there was so much demand, given the number of seats that are out there. So that's the domestic U.S. But you're right, international doesn't have that ability to just come and go as you please. And the rules at each country are different. And as a result, there's a real restriction on demand. And business isn't back to really doing business like we used to, which is a lot of international travel as well. So for all those reasons, it's not back all the way, but it's coming. And we're flying more and more internationally. We'll fly a good bit more this summer. Really encouraged by last week, or actually this week, the UK announced they've taken away all COVID restrictions. So no vaccination requirement, no testing requirement before you take off or when you land. Eventually, we're all going to be there. So anyway, you can come and go from the UK as you please. Well, that's not quite true, actually, because if you're a U.S. citizen, you can't. You can go. But to come back to the United States, you need to have within 48 hours of your arrival, of your departure from the UK, you need to have a negative COVID test, which is a huge suppressor of demand. Because people are worried about getting over there, and whatever the probability is, you actually still have a positive test. It's not zero, and that's a real big problem for people to actually get stuck in the UK for an additional 7 or 14 days until you can pass a test. So that stops people from traveling. So anyway, we're not doing things like that. Again, I know different parts of the country are in different spots, but we're not requiring people to be taking. To show negative tests to do much of anything else these days. But to travel back to the United States, anyone has to have a negative test within 48 hours of travel. And that stops you from leaving the United States.
That's true.
Yes, it does.
But on the good news, last week you had a big spike in bookings. Were you surprised?
Yeah, again, this is back to demand. This last week, three of the 5 days last week were the highest booked revenue days in our history, not just post-pandemic, that we've ever had. So the amount of volume coming in from people buying tickets, that's what booked revenue is, was the 3 highest days we've ever had, and a couple of them 15% higher than the past. Now, that doesn't mean revenues are going to be 15% higher in the future. That means there may have been a lot of pent-up demand and people are all buying at one time when it was spread out more before. But it's really encouraging. I mean, think about that. We're flying fewer seats still. We're not flying as many seats as we flew in 2019. So there's less inventory to purchase. Those people that are purchasing, most of them aren't flying international, which is higher revenue. Most of them, the mix of leisure versus business is higher, which is lower revenue. But despite all those factors, we're still seeing more revenue come in, or more bookings come in than we've ever had before. Demand is really, really strong where you really are free to come and go.
Well, given your background as a financial analyst, a first job at American, that has to make you very happy.
As a financial analyst, it does. As for our team, it makes me happy. For our customers, it makes me happy. It's nice to see. Again, what it proves, to me anyway, is all of this, as it relates to our industry anyway, is of course it's all demand driven. These other crises, back to the first question, what was different about those times as well is the industry wasn't well. We had so many things we had to go through, and some was in the video. There were too many airlines trying to do the same things. Consolidating made us still an intensely competitive business, but a healthier one because we could provide more utility to our customers. And airlines like American, Delta, United can take you now anywhere around the world. We compete with each other on that. So that needed to happen. And what's going on now, none of this is us saying, oh, the industry is somehow so broken that we need to change it. It was entirely demand-driven due to a global pandemic. The global pandemic has had a huge impact on demand. But once the things that made the demand go away are gone, which again is the pandemic itself, which hopefully is behind us or quickly or shortly will be. And then importantly, once the pandemic's not there, all these restrictions that are in place go away as well.
Well, on the flip side, let's talk about like smaller communities, because there are small airports that are closing and a lot of underserved customers. So taking back from international to the local level, how can airlines, including American, do a better job of supporting those smaller communities?
Sure, yeah, look, incredibly important to us. Again, not totally just out of philanthropic reasons. We do well in small communities because of how we serve. But airlines like American can do this much better than others. We're what we call hub and spoke airlines. And those of you that live in small communities know that all your flights are going to fly to a place like Dallas or Atlanta or Chicago, and then you connect to wherever you want to go. That's the hub and spoke system. That's what we at American and United and Delta all do. We fly you into hubs, connect a lot of people, fly back out. Because we do that, we serve so many more cities than the other carriers do that are flying much more point to point. There's not enough demand in markets like Flagstaff, Arizona to fly from Flagstaff to Sacramento, of course, and there never will be. But we can get you from Flagstaff to Sacramento. And carriers that are primarily serving point to point markets will never do that. And their airplanes are too big. So the way small community service is going to continue to exist is by having airlines like ours that indeed have the right fleet mix to serve those markets and the right system to do so. We're proud to do it. We keep expanding into smaller markets. We will continue to do so. It's really important. One of the things, again, that happened in this, why we were able to get support through this crisis, was how important the airlines are to the economy, of course, but also just to people's lives. And if indeed we had been forced to shut down, which we would have been during the pandemic without some support from the U.S. government, there would have been no air service to all those small communities. And it's because of that that we did get service. And part of our commitment to the aid was that we would serve every market. That every airport in the United States that had service prior to the pandemic would have some service. It had less service, of course, but we agreed we weren't going to stop serving any markets. And as a result, everyone kept air service. And now we're all adding them back. There's a bit of an issue now for small communities in that we've gotten to a point where we don't have as many pilots as we need. And that's never a problem for American or some of our large competitors because we have a lot more applicants than we have pilots. But the fact is you have to retire as a pilot at age 65. So over the last couple of years, there have been a lot of retirements. We're going to hire a couple thousand pilots at American this year. Most of those, or many of those anyway, come from the regional carriers that fly to these small communities. So we're finding at that level that there just aren't enough pilots yet. It'll happen. There weren't enough in the pipeline getting the hours they need to be able to fly at these regional carriers. That we are constrained on our ability to serve as much small community service right now as there is demand for, and as we'd like to. But we'll get through that.
Sounds good. At a show of hands, how many people are from Austin in the crowd? If you could raise your hand. Oh, lots of you. Fantastic. Then this next question is for you. You live in such a growing city. Obviously, more people. How is American specifically accommodating Austin?
Oh, we're committed to Austin, and we're big here. So we are the largest. We serve much more of Texas than anyone else, and Austin is, as you say, growing and a really important part of the American airline system. We've used this period over the last couple of years to actually go and acquire more gates here at the airport here in Austin, which we're excited about. We're now serving like 27 different nonstop routes. It's one of these very few communities that's big enough actually to not actually be an entire hub, but still have nonstop service to a number of markets without having to fly to hubs, and those just keep growing. We're adding we're expanding our Admirals Club here. A really nice new 15,000 square foot Admirals Club is being built. Hopefully be in place before too long. We're really committed to Austin, and we'll be here a long time and continue to expand.
Sounds good. Speaking of expansion, American has an enormous fleet. Sorry, I have to refer to my notes on this one. You've got 865 mainline aircraft, 567 regional aircraft, and 210 on order. That's a lot of aircraft.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you also are deferring 30 737 MAXs and 787 Dreamliners from the Q1 2023 to the Q4 of next year. So there's got to be some good art of aircraft negotiations going on. We know Boeing has had some problems, but any tips?
On aircraft negotiations?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have those are all orders that we did a while back, so that's good news. But I don't know if we were in aircraft negotiations right now. What I always think the best thing to do is make sure you have a really good competition. It's hard. There's only 2 aircraft manufacturers for most of what we fly, either Airbus or Boeing. But fortunately, they really don't like each other, so they compete. They compete intensely against each other, and what you need to do is just make. And they do have. I mean, again, we all may have different preferences on certain aircraft types, but they've done a really nice job of making sure that they have competitive products versus each other for pretty much any kind of mission you want to fly. So yeah, you just run a competition, and the other thing, and make sure you're getting what you need. Sometimes they want to sell things we don't really need. But yeah, it's mostly like anything else. Go do some real diligence. It matters. Most importantly, you want an aircraft that can fly the mission. But like I say, both of them they make really nice products. Both companies do. And it's just a matter of who wants the business more.
Yeah. Well, given the size of that fleet, I'd imagine you have some leverage when you walk into Boeing or it's like, hey, I'm thinking about spending $1 billion. What do you have for me?
Yeah.
And then you have some negotiating power.
We do. Yeah. We'd actually. What's really nice is when they deliver them on time.
So you're asking for a lot.
Yeah. No. Exactly. It's one thing to negotiate a good deal, but actually delivery is really critical. We're having trouble with that right now.
Yeah, you are. But another reason that I'm not going to go there. Another reason that you buy new aircraft is for fuel efficiency. Going back to our fuel question, in addition to renewing your fleet, which you already have a fairly young fleet, what other sustainability efforts do you have going on at American?
Oh well, first and foremost, the biggest thing by far for the global airline community is sustainable aviation fuels. We have a huge incentive, first off, if it wasn't just to do the right thing for the environment, to reduce our carbon footprint, because our carbon footprint, 99.9% of it is driven by how much fuel we burn, which has, as we talked about, is our second largest cost. So we already do everything we can to burn as little fuel as possible. The problem with the fuel we burn is it emits carbon. So the real answer to making aviation sustainable is having sustainable aviation fuels, which can be produced. They can be produced at scale. They're nothing close to what is being produced today to do so. So this is, in addition to all the things I can tell you about that American's doing, as important as they are, as excited as we are about them, for example, a large investment in a group called Breakthrough Energy, which is a group led by Microsoft and Blackstone, and a number of big companies like American now have joined. What they're doing is going and taking investments and putting them into sustainable without the kind of return you might expect on your investment. It's really to do the right thing for the economy and get startups started. But our interest in that is making sure they go work on encouraging sustainable aviation fuel supply. But we need more than that. This can't get done with the private sector. This has to be done by the U.S. government. I saw in the intro, Secretary Buttigieg was here. He's been incredibly supportive on this front, and we're thankful. But we need legislation. It was part of Build Back Better, which of course hasn't gotten done, which is a tax credit for sustainable aviation fuels. So hopefully we'll get it done somewhere else. That tax credit, by the way, is not going to be sufficient, but that's okay. Let's get a tax credit in place to stimulate some development, and we can always work on making it larger if we have to. But that's the answer. We need to get to where and it's frankly the only answer because that'll make it happen. So we're all dedicated to that, and we all should be as a country.
And speaking of sustainability, electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles there's a lot of interest, and some of your competitors, like
Yes.
United has signed an LOI with Archer. eVair Mobility has a deal with ANA. Future of American Airlines, connecting the different pieces. Is American interested in eVTOLs?
Absolutely. And we also have an investment with a partner in electric vehicles as well, electric flights as well. The issue there, of course, is, that of course would be an answer of two. But the problem with at least for the foreseeable future is the range and the weight capacity of electric aircraft is nowhere near enough to serve even moderately long distances with moderately high levels of passengers. So it'll help, but it's going to be much more helping get people into hubs, for example, on short distances. But no, yeah, absolutely, we're committed to that as well. It'll and again, that helps take some of the burden off of the amount of total jet fuel that's produced. So that's part of the solution as well. It's a smaller piece though.
And as far as changes to the industry, we've talked about mergers and how important that's been over the last couple of decades. Spirit and Frontier have a potential merger going on. Do you expect any other mergers happening, or has it kind of settled out?
Yeah, we're close, I think. What I know for certain is the ones that that were part of that video that needed to happen to make the industry stronger. We had like 6, 7 airlines trying to fly these hub and spoke systems, and that was just none of us could provide the utility the customer wanted, which is I just wanted to have an airline that can take me everywhere. So that consolidation was really critical to actually making the industry stable and be, again, intensely competitive, but just being able to withstand crises like this. There's nothing else that I don't want to minimize Spirit Frontier. It's an important transaction for those airlines. But there's nothing that transformational for our industry in terms of mergers left. I mean, we, Delta or United, can't merge with each other, that's for certain. So that you won't see any more done by us. And some of the smaller carriers, it may make sense for them to do something together. It may make sense for some of our larger carriers over time to merge or acquire some smaller airlines, but those are really hard to pull off now, and I don't know when that environment will change. So instead, what we do is, and what we think makes sense in American, is what we've done with Alaska and JetBlue, which is put in place rather than merging our carriers. Those are two great airlines, fiercely independent, but we have put in place strong marketing arrangements where we actually we can coordinate our schedules, and where we can, or encouraged actually, we can't talk to each other. We don't have any trust immunity, of course, but we can. There are incentives for us both because it helps the customer to be co-located and to have our schedules pair up more in places like New York or Seattle, and to provide better connecting activity in spots where American wasn't as strong as some of our competitors, the Northwest and in New York. So those alliances, I think, are probably what you're going to see more of as opposed to mergers and acquisitions. And I think that's good for the consumer.
That makes sense. You have been an advocate for workforce and supporting diversity, for years. This is nothing new for you. But American Airlines, like other airlines, have a workforce issue. There's just a shortage. It's not just airlines, it's any industry, right? But American is hoping to hire 18,000 people this year. That's a huge number. You're going to have to, I'd assume, tap into different pools of talent that you haven't previously. So 18,000 people. How in the heck are you going to do that?
Well, it's one. People want to work at American Airlines, I'm proud to report. So in general, we're not going to have problem finding enough people to fill those jobs. Like I say, even for pilots, we want to make certain though that we're getting the best people. And when barriers exist to the best being able to be in that pool, then we're not going to have the best of the best. So I think it's important for all of us to work to pull down barriers that exist. That keep some of the best from being able to succeed. The pilot workforce is one of those. It's, as I described, there's a shortage of pilots right now. In order to become a pilot, one of the things you need to have is 1,500 hours in order to fly at a regional airline by statute. Before you can be hired, you have to have 1,500 hours. So how do you get 1,500 hours? You go to flight school. How do you go to flight school? You pay for it. It's expensive. It can be about up to $100,000. It's an amazing investment because you're going to make that back really quickly. Pilots are, for good reason, well compensated. But that excludes so many great people because we don't have a federal loan system like we do to go to a liberal arts school like I did that allows support for that. And we got to figure out a way to tear that barrier down. We're doing it at American, where we have our own cadet academy, where we in concert with the bank, we provide a loan. We have everything set up for the individual, and that academy is focused almost entirely on its female pilots and minority pilots. So we're excited about that, but it's not big enough. We need to be doing more. And one of the things I'm going to be working on once I'm done doing this is figuring out ways to do more of that. Again, it's much like sustainable aviation fuel. We have so many people that know it's the right thing to do, and we're doing pockets of things, but it's bigger than that. And it's a fantastic job. It's a hard job. You have to have the aptitude, but there are lots of people with the aptitude and the desire that simply don't see that they have any path to it. That's not right. So we're going to work to make that better.
Okay, so for any of you out there who are thinking about a new career path and just considering airlines, talk to Doug afterwards.
Yeah, or get your kids to go. I mean, honestly, there is no requirement for a college degree. You need to have the hours. Again, you need aptitude. It's not an easy job to do. If you know people that are interested in flying, they should. It's a great career and one that for too long we've made too exclusive.
Well, speaking of opportunities, you made a friend on Southwest Airlines a couple years ago. Can you tell us about that? I think this is the coolest story.
Sure. It was during the pandemic, right after the murder of George Floyd. I was flying from Dallas to the Panhandle of Florida, Panama City, and decided to do so on relatively short notice. There weren't a lot of flights at the time. Of course, we'd all pared back our schedules, and it turned out that our flight on American was sold out. So I bought a ticket on Southwest, and it was painful, but I did it.
Yeah. So back of the bus economy, like no leg room?
They don't have anything but back of the bus on Southwest. So yeah, so anyway, and they have that boarding system of theirs where you just go by your number, and anyway, so.
Group 5.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. No, Group 5, but whatever. I paid the little premium they charged to be at the front. So anyway, so I board. Anyway, the story's this. So I'm boarding the Southwest airplane, and I'm desperately trying not to be recognized by anyone, to be outed for flying Southwest. It was easy because I have a mask on, and while a bunch of airline people know who I am, most people don't know who I am. So I'm relatively confident I'm okay. But anyway, so I have my mask on. No one's noticed who I am. I get on the airplane. I had. Actually, the gentleman who was in the video, my friend from Albion who's on our board, Marty Nesbitt, had recommended to me prior to the pandemic this book called White Fragility. He said, he'd read the book and he said, this is the book, if you really, for people like you, Doug, you should read. So I'd begun reading it, and then the pandemic hit. I'd stopped reading it, and with the murder of George Floyd, I thought, I need to pull that back out. So anyway, I pulled that out of my backpack because I wasn't sure where I was going to be sitting, if I was going to be able to have my backpack with me. And I had it in my hand. I board the airplane. There's this flight attendant standing up front. She's a black woman standing up front. I smile at her. She seems nice as can be. Go sit in my seat and throw the book in the seat back pocket, and proceed actually to not read the book, but to start sending emails to my team and things, work stuff. And with 20 minutes left in the flight, all of a sudden, I happened to be able to get a full row. So I'm in the back, have a full row, because the plane wasn't full. We were full, but they weren't. Go for it. So
fact check. I would just.
Yeah. So I was pleased about that. So, but anyway, so I'm sitting there, have this row to myself, and I sensed someone. I'm in the window seat. I sense someone sitting in the plops down in the aisle seat, and I look over, and it's this flight attendant. And again, I'm in the back, she's working the front. She comes, sits down, and I'm looking at her and thinking, oh, she's figured out who I am. No, she has no idea who I am. She says, how's the book? And I'm like, oh, it's really good. I'm only like halfway through it, and I'm defensively showing her that I really have been reading it. I said, it's really good. I'm only halfway through it, and I said, it just talks about how important it is to have conversations about race. I said, look, it's people like myself. It's our fault, but it just talks about how we need to talk to each other more about race, and we don't do it very well. So I said, I'm just trying to learn. And she said, so am I. And then she started crying. And she shared with me that she had spent her day driving in praying. And it was hard for her to go into the work. She'd seen all that was going on in Minneapolis and around the country. And she didn't know how she could go do her job and smile and be happy. So she said she'd been praying about it. And she said when she saw me walking on with that book, it felt like that was the answer to her prayer, and she just needed to come talk to me. Yeah, exactly. So I didn't do anything. Jacques Hill's her name. She was the one who had the courage and who started the courageous conversation. We had a great conversation for 10 minutes before she had to go back up to the front of the aircraft for landing. And toward the end of it, I felt like I should tell her who I was. So I said, she told her name was Jacques. I said, I'm Doug Parker. I'm the CEO of American Airlines. And she goes, oh my God, my mom works for you.
Small world.
Yeah, her mom works for us in Reagan Airport in DC. So anyway, she gives me a pandemic hug over the middle seat and thanks me and goes back. And so we're now on descent, and I scribble a note to her about how impactful it was to me, and hand her the note. And she asked for a picture together. We get a picture, and anyway, I'd send her mom a text saying how great it was to meet her daughter and how impactful it was to me. She, being younger than me, takes all that and posts it to Facebook. And all of a sudden I'm in People magazine. So it was, and look, it was incredibly impactful to me. It made a huge difference. As I told her in that note, I think, I'm never going to forget that conversation. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to do what I can, and as best as I can. So telling the story is one thing. We used it at American to put in place. We already had, I think, industry-leading kind of diversity and initiatives, but we weren't having those conversations. So we made sure that we added to all that we were doing, a forum for people to have conversations. And I've been a part of, 10 or 20 of them. Every one of them is just incredibly impactful, and they make a huge difference. At some point in them, someone always says, look, I'm tired of talking. We've been talking forever. I'm looking for action. And I agree with them, but those talks lead to action much better than just saying, where's the action? I mean, people like us need to hear what in this case, Black people are going through. And it's entirely different than what I went through. And it's entirely different than what I go through every day. And the stories you hear are just heart-wrenching. They don't seem right. They don't seem fair. And you can't help but want to go do something to change it. So anyway, thanks to Jacques Ray. She's a friend of ours now and always will be. And she made a huge difference in my life.
Well, you hinted, so Doug is retiring 2 weeks from today. 14 more days.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And you had mentioned that you might be doing some DEI sort of things after retirement, or are you just gonna sleep? What's the plan? You've got 2 weeks. Do you have hobbies?
I honestly don't know. And so I say stuff like, that's what I'm gonna go work on, but I don't have a plan to go do that yet. I'm gonna figure it out. Mm-hmm. What I know is this. People that I've talked to that have done similar things say, just don't go jump into anything. Go take a little time, and things will come to you. I get people calling me to do stuff now, and I'm not returning the calls. I probably shouldn't. I'm not being rude, but it's just like, I'm not interested in doing anything just yet. I'm not going to jump into anything. I'm going to take a little time. I'm going to, I guess, you say it's 2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
So
31st.
It'll be a Friday. Will be my first day just not going into the office or not having any work to do whatsoever. So I don't know, I'll go to lunch with my wife and have lunch, and then we'll figure it out from there. I honestly don't have any plans. That may sound strange. I'm really comfortable with it. I'm excited about it. I like uncertainty, and this is a whole new world. And I'm certain that in a pretty short period of time, if I'm really just staying home, I'll get bored really quickly, and Gwen will say, "Go find something to do." Also, so
I was going to say, like, Gwen will give you a honey-do list.
Yeah,
like,
precisely.
okay, come on.
She has a real life that she doesn't need me hanging around. So anyway, long way of me saying I'm not certain, but there are things I care about. The beauty is I get to go work on what I want to work on. I mean, I love working for the airline, but there are parts of it that you think, I got to go to that meeting. I don't have to do that anymore.
Exactly, and I bet you have travel benefits.
Yeah, I
you
do.
can probably, so.
Yeah, we can get around.
Yeah, I could have figured such. You know what? I'm going to leave. So I have a lot more questions, but I want you to have the opportunity to ask questions too. There's two ways to do that. There are microphones and us here, and I'm sorry, the light's rightly bright. Is there one over here too? And then you can also just use the South by Southwest app and pose questions that way as well. Any questions or, sure. Would you mind going over to the microphone? Thank you.
It's over there.
Hi. I wanted to ask what the airline industry can do for situations like Ukraine, what's happening there, if there's more you can say there, and also the impact of fuel prices too.
I'm sorry, what was
what fuel prices?
Yeah.
Fuel prices with that, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. First off, we immediately did everything we could. Any relationships we had with Russia, we terminated. Those include overflying the country, which they, before they've now restricted it. But we had flights that would fly in Russian airspace. That's a source of a reasonable amount of income to the Russian government. It's an enormous country, of course, and any flights that fly over there, they receive. You need to pay for those overflight rights. So we've stopped doing that immediately. We don't have any flights, like I say, into or out of Russia, but we stopped overflying. We had relationships with an airline called S7 is in our alliance, Oneworld, and while Oneworld still has them in the alliance, we severed all of our relationships with S7 for code sharing and frequent flyer miles, et cetera. We did that immediately. We have a smaller relationship with our Aeroflot. Really, just you can, if you work hard, you can buy a ticket on American and have it interline onto Aeroflot. We canceled that interline agreement, so they don't have the benefit of American Airlines customers. So we did all that right away. We were working with our partner UNICEF. We have a long-standing relationship with American. We collect money on international flights from UNICEF to use they're using all their funds this month and hopefully further in support of the Ukrainians. And then while we don't fly to the region, we have a lot of cargo relationships. So we are, I'm getting a couple notes a week from people who have need to get goods moved to the Ukraine, and we're working really hard to do everything we can to help. We can get a part way there. We have partners that get the rest of the way. So we're doing all those things in support. As for the fuel prices, yeah, it's had an impact on fuel prices, on oil prices, and that'll have an impact on our financials, but that's okay. We'll work through that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Doug. Thank you very much for the talk. My name is Kim. I'm from Toronto, Canada.
Hi.
And I help to run an incubator for young people, so high school students. They learn emerging tech and then use that to solve really big problems in the world. Things like machine learning, quantum computing, like 45 other technologies.
Awesome.
So I know you talked a lot about the renewable fuels and electric vehicles and emissions in general, being more climate sensitive. But I'm wondering, are there any other problems that you've seen in the airline industry that are maybe not as sexy or not as talked about as often, that some really ambitious 15, 16-year-olds with wild ideas and knowledge in emerging tech might be able to solve?
Oh yeah, we got lots of them. We got all sorts of little, not as interesting problems, and everything that we have going on at the airline, when you sit down and talk to the leadership, every single executive is going to say we need tech help, because it continues to evolve. Of course, we think we're on, we like to think we're on the forefront, but we're not. We can always do more. I'm really excited about, and again, and like you say, it doesn't require somebody to go, have philosophy 101 and a liberal arts major to come work at American Airlines and help us in this regard. So we have a program actually with the Dallas Independent School District that's been incredibly effective in this, by the way, where we have where our team goes out and helps, and IBM's with us on this, goes and has over the course of the last, we just graduated our first class, has students who learn how to code. And by the time, and end up actually taking college courses while they're still in high school. And we just hired at American, 4 or 5 of these students, 18-year-olds, just high school graduates now working at American Airlines in IT, and they're doing great things. So anyway, please come talk to us. If you know people like that, we could use them all.
Sure.
We have all sorts of issues they could help us solve.
Okay, and I just find that on the website somewhere, or I'll get a contact somewhere.
Yeah, well, please do.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for the conversation. It was great. I'm Lucas Kessner. I'm the president of the Crystal Cabin Awards and also the co-founder of the Sustainable Air Lab. We're a global accelerator for sustainable aviation startups.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, I had a session here on Tuesday already on the future of aviation, hydrogen versus electric. And you already mentioned sustainable aviation fuels, but I was wondering, what do you think of the more complex technologies such as hydrogen? And how do you even gain expertise at a large airline like American in this segment when your business is to sell seats and keep the operations running smoothly? So I think there's probably not a lot of time to experiment on the side.
Yeah, well, we're not going to. Anyway, the answer is you're right. Our job is to serve customers and to sell seats. We're not going to be able to keep doing that if we don't get to where we're carbon neutral over time, and we're committed to doing so by 2040. So we're incredibly interested in what you're describing. There are going to be the manufacturers themselves that are going to actually probably have to go do the development itself. But we are doing everything we can to support them, and we'll continue to do so. As to hydrogen, again, my knowledge on this is less than yours and a lot of other people's. What we've been told at this point is, yeah, there's some hope there, but at this point, it's decades away from where hydrogen can actually be used to power jet airplanes. But if it can, fantastic. And I know Airbus in particular is working hard on development in that regard. So yeah, I should have mentioned that as well. If we can get to where we don't have to burn fuel at all, that obviously works, and it would be fantastic. My understanding, at least right now, the physics is simply that to power the engines we have to fly aircraft, it needs to be, it needs to be something like jet fuel, and so we're focused mostly on sustainable aviation fuel. But hydrogen and electric will certainly play a role in helping to offset some of that. So thank you.
Hi, Lee. Hi, Doug. Thank you.
Hi.
Great insights from your talk, and congratulations. Your career is amazing. I'm Marco. I'm with Embraer, more specifically with Embraer X, which is our disruptive innovation arm.
Yep.
So besides the eVTOLs that everybody already is aware of, EV Air Mobility, we are also deploying solutions to bring the aviation family together, like the Beacon platform, to allow to collaborate better and keep passengers flying. So to this point, I would love to hear from you your insights about how you see the future of the siloed mindset in aviation to a more distributed and setting the stage to Gen Z talents and future generations in aviation.
Just in aviation in general?
Yes. How our industry is responding to that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And again, obviously, thank you. You're part of the solution that we just talked about, and manufacturers like Embraer working on things like VTOL are incredibly important. As it relates to careers and how we move from, I mean, I think it's fair to say that our industry is an old mainline industry, does have anyway, certainly an aging workforce in many respects, and one that, but the beauty of airlines is what we do is so complicated. What I love about airlines, it may not sound that sexy, but those of us that work in it know that what's great about airlines is how incredibly complicated it is, how much tech can help, how every function matters is one of the things I really like. I went to work at an airline because I had a finance MBA and finance was important there, and I wanted to work somewhere where finance is important, but everything's important. Finance is important because of capital. It's a service business, so marketing is incredibly important, enormous workforce, so all human resources are important, and the operational logistics are the most complicated of any business in the world. So I like it for all those reasons, and we were working really hard to make sure that we have a company that is designed for people like yourself and young people to come and be excited. I think we're doing a really nice job. Our headquarters, in particular, that we just built, opened it right before the pandemic, unfortunately. But it's made for the new world. It's made for us to communicate with each other. It's all open space, and a really phenomenal building. People just walk in there and say, "I want to work here." Even people that think they want to work from home get drawn in and want to be where we are. So we'll keep working on it. What I know is it's a wonderful place to work. The industry in total is a fantastic place to work, and we're gonna keep attracting young people into the jobs we need to.
Can I ask a really quick question? We've had 3 people ask this question online. Unruly passengers. During the pandemic, the number of unruly passengers has made it very difficult for flight attendants. Is that number going down, or is it still bad?
It's going down, but it's still too high. This is anyway. I get reasonably upset about this. Our flight attendants, they do such a phenomenal job of taking care of customers, and their job primarily is to keep everyone safe, of course. But they also do it in a way that makes the experience so much better, and we have such a great group. We've made their job so much harder in the last couple of years because they have to enforce a federal mask mandate. All these incidents aren't due to masks, by the way, but a lot of them are. And their job, they don't have a choice. It's a federal mandate, and they have to enforce the mask mandate. And that's resulted in, for whatever reason, some people who don't want to behave. And it's one thing to not want to do that, but you have to comply. It's entirely another thing to actually put your hands on a flight attendant. And we have far too many. And I should always start this by saying it's the vast majority of our customers do the right thing and are good, but it doesn't take many. We were having at some point. It's like one in. Get this number right. It's like 1 in every 200,000 customers. So a very, very small number. But we'd have to actually go have an investigation as to whether or not we're going to ban them from the airline. But look, we were flying 600,000 people a day. It's 3 people a day. Got to the level that we were having to go look as to whether we're going to say, you can't fly us again. And that's what we'll do, of course, if you abuse one of our flight attendants. Or gate agents who also have this problem. So anyway, 3 people a day, including someone who punched one of our flight attendants, broke her nose. And anyway, it has to stop. This is more about, I think, where we are as a country as it is versus anything else. And it's just how we've gotten to where we're less civil and people can get that upset about something that is not that important. But anyway, we're taking care of it. If you do something like that, you're never going to fly American Airlines again. Not once the masks are gone, you can come back. You're never flying us again. And because we're going to support our team. And it's just, anyway, please behave.
Sorry, we have 1.5 minutes left. So if you can make a really short question.
Sure. Good morning, and I agree with you. White Fragility is a great book. I wanted to ask you a question about, so you're talking about your profits are up and demand's up, and I'm happy about that.
I didn't say our profits are up, but go ahead.
But I will say, but what's sad is the customer experience during COVID.
Yeah.
I feel like with transportation and flying, once you get to the airport, there's less flight attendants, there's less gate agents, less people that check your bags. You can barely get a car when you get there to your destination. And it seems like we're paying the same prices and we're getting less customer service. And it's just not just transportation, right?
Sure.
Like hospitality is the same way with hotels. You check in, you can barely get your room clean. You don't get breakfast anymore. You can barely get a towel. So my question is, do you see that changing sometime soon? Or do you think with profits and would it be a hard sell to say, hey, we need to hire more staff and yet we're going to lose that profit share that we were enjoying a year ago because we have to bring back the customer experience?
Yeah, thanks. I can't do anything about the cars, we'll try, but as it relates to us, we haven't reduced per flight, for example, the number of flight attendants per flight. We haven't reduced the number of gate agents per flight. We have fewer people just because we have fewer flights at points in time, but we certainly haven't reduced service there. Where we have reduced service is some of the amenities in flight. We did so entirely in relation to the pandemic. Recall, certainly early on, handing back and forth things like drinks and credit cards even were things that people didn't want to do. So we took away for a while, no carts came up and down the aisles even. Now we have carts coming up and down the aisle, but they're just serving beverages, at least in coach. And non-alcoholic, by the way, because it's Unruly Passenger thing. Anyway, it's all coming back. That's gradually coming back. It is not about expense, I promise you. It was all about the pandemic, and it takes a while. Supply chain's an issue. It's taken a while for us to get supplies back, but we're about to reintroduce, meals in coach. We're about to I'll be careful with. I don't think we've announced some things yet, but when we've tied the alcohol in coach to the mask mandate. The mask mandate has been extended to April 18th now by the federal government. So we're not going to serve alcohol at least until then. But these things will come back as over time. And again, it's not about staffing. We're not doing this to save money. We're not serving meals because we don't want to pay for them. Indeed, in coach, you pay for them for the meals. So we're bringing it all back. It's just taking a little while to get there.
I hate to do this, but we've run out of time. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions online and in person, but Doug, it's been great.
Thanks, Lee Ann.
Thank you. And before we go,
yes,
you're not going to have a media relations team, in a couple of weeks. Are you good with social media?
Am I good with social media?
Yeah. Can you take a selfie? Do you want to take a selfie? Can everybody stand up, give Doug a hand, and then we'll do a selfie?
You go ahead. I'll have my phone.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Lee Ann. Okay. Oh, it's so cool.
Okay. So everybody, okay. All right. Ready? Okay. Here we go. Do you want to try it?
No, you go ahead.
Oh. No. I'm going to enable you.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. So everybody.
It's not going to look that good.
Well, okay.
Get in.
We have to aim it.
What?
Okay.
I know,
Okay.
I do know what I'm doing.
Okay.
Oh shit.
Less ceiling. Yeah.
Less ceiling.
Yeah. Okay. There. Yeah.
Those lights are really bright.
I know. Okay, that's a good.
Right,
okay.
Good.
Cool. Thanks.
All right.
So,
Thank you all
everybody,
very much.
thank you. Really great question. And Doug, thank you.